Hello everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming along to this session. We've got an hour together, and we're talking about, as you can see here, the future of work. Now, I know many people have already been to some of my presentations in the past, but there's some people here who haven't. So let me quickly go through my three kind of standard rules of engagement for all of these presentations. So the first thing is I want to give you some things to think about. So if do what you can to avoid distractions, to avoid interruptions, and can I invite you while you're here to think big in this session and think of some ideas that may be a little bit like not necessarily feasible or plausible to implement, because it's easier to do it that way and then walk it back later when life gets in the way rather than the other way around. And the second thing I'd like you to do is be a bit playful here. So I'm going to ask you at various times for you to engage, and if you're here live, then you can do that. By the way, if you're watching the recording, hello to you. You don't get to engage live, but please engage. There's time for you to ask me questions in the chat and to interact that way. So again, be playful, think a little bit bigger, and make the most of it for yourself and for other people in the room as well. But the other really important thing is that I want you to have some things to take away and put into action. Not next month, not even next week, but some things that you may be able to do in the next day or so. And I will give you some really practical things. Okay, I'd like to know where we're from. So I know just looking at the registration list, most people are here from the region. So if you can just type in the chat where you're from. So I'm from Perth, so I type in Perth. Let's just see where everyone in the room is from. I think it's mostly around Australia and New Zealand. Let's see. Right, good. Yes, as I thought, mostly around Australia. Now, a lot of the things, Bris Vegas, I don't think my map recognizes Bris Vegas, Harry. So we'll see. Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Okay, I want to start with a little bit of a story. This is a little bit of story. This is a story that comes from my past, about 12, maybe even 13 years ago now. There's a little park a couple of 100 meters down from where I live, and we used to take our Cocker Spaniel, Jessie, for a run in the park. It was a while ago, so Jessie's no longer with us, but since then we've had two other Cocker Spaniels, Harley and Jasper, who've entered our lives. But I remember at the time, when we took Jessie for a run in the park, my local council had zoned the park in a special way. So they had these signs all around the park, and the way they'd zoned it was the blue area at the south, the bottom part of the park, was where you could let your dog off the leash and she could run around. The red area at the top was where you had to keep your dog on the leash. And this is a multi-use park, so it was for dog walking, for local residents, sporting events and so on. So they had this park zoned this way. The only problem was, between the blue area and the red area, there was no fence, there was no gate, and Jessie can't read. So we let her loose in the blue area and she just ran everywhere around the park. And I remember even at that time thinking, this is what disruption's like now. This is what change is like. The dogs are off their leash and we can't pretend that they're not, and we can't wish that we could bring them back in. So, of course, when we're looking at the future, it's going to look very different from the past. And we need a new set of skills to be able to manage and navigate this future. I'm sorry to break it to you if this is news to you, but we've all got a one-way ticket into that future. So we need to be able to manage the future, and today, the future of work, in different ways. So I'm going to ask you, let's do this through this. Just type in the chat what you think is let's say the most important skill that we need for the future, and just one or two words. So that's the sort of things people type, are things like creativity or AI. Let's see what's coming up. Resilience, flexibility, adaptability, curiosity, adaptability and flexibility, navigating information, good, curiosity. Okay, So thank you everyone for sharing, and thank you for doing it so quickly, by the way. I really appreciate that. Okay, so I had a bet with myself on what would be the top skills that came up, and I've only got one slide that's got it on there, and it turns out that we've got a very smart room here. So adaptability and flexibility. And I think these, whether you call it adaptability or flexibility or being able to manage change, these are the most important skills that we need for the future. I love all the others as well, but I think we need to be more adaptable and flexible than we have ever been before, and we need to learn that as a skill. So this is one of the things that isn't really taught, but we need to do that, right? So if you are, let's say you're promoting somebody into a leadership position for the first time, well, you might want to give them some leadership or management training. If you're putting someone into a sales role, you might want to give them some sales training. Well, our future is going to have a lot of change, and we need to be adaptable and flexible. How much professional development are we giving our people to learn how to do that for themselves, and if they're a leader or manager, for their teams as well? Like, we know that we can be adaptable, we can change fast. We did this. Remember this when there was a deadly virus? We went to QR codes and working from home and online meetings and click and collect and all of those sort of things because we knew that there was a need for it. Now, there's still that need for it. It's not due to an invisible virus, but there are other changes that are happening in the world that are going to affect us. So when we're thinking about the future of work, it's all about being able to manage that for ourselves, our team, our organization, our family and community, if you want to go even wider. So when you think about the future of work, think about it as this is our goal. So it's not only about hybrid work or AI going to help us in our jobs or replace our jobs. Think about the big picture is this. So it's empowering your people to embrace the future. Not just to tolerate it and accept it and be resilient to it, but to embrace it. Okay, so that's the gold standard. Now, not every team and every organization is going to get there, but that's what we should be aiming for. So, when we say future of work, lots of people mean different things by it. It could be where work gets done. It could be the direction that work's taking because of external pressures. It could be around where ideas come from and innovation. It could be collaborating, not just with the people in your team, but with others as well. It could be around mindset and skills. It could be about money. The high cost of living is affecting a lot of people at the moment. Then it's looking at what's coming up in the future. And of course, everyone's talking about AI now. I can tell you that when I asked people beforehand, the people who are attending, what question you'd like me to address about the future of work, what's your biggest challenge? Every question had an AI flavor to it. Okay, it's really interesting. So we'll talk about AI today as one of the 4 factors around the future of work, but I think it's so much in demand to know how to manage that. Maybe my next of these presentations will be specifically about AI. But let me talk about those 4 things. I said there are 4 of them. So one is assessing and understanding the work that's coming up in the future, so you know what work's required. The second bit is finding, nurturing, and importantly, keeping the best people. So this is like there's a war for talent, and talent is winning. So it's more and more challenging to find the best people to do that work. The third part is where AI comes in, humans and machines. And so if it's knowledge work, it's obviously people working with AI. If it's physical work, it's people working with robots and other technology. And the last one is this, and I think this is the most important, the adapt bit. So having that culture in your team, now that you know what work's happening, now you know that you've got the right people to do it, you know how they're going to work with AI or with robots, and now how do you build that culture that embraces change? So we're going to look at all 4 of them here today, very briefly in each one of them, but this is my model for the future of work, and we'll look at each of these 4. They all work together. So even though we're going to look at them individually, they do all work together. So let me get a temperature of the room. How do you feel about the future of work? And I'm going to ask you to share this, not in the chat, but using your emojis in Zoom. So go to the React or the Reactions little button at the top of your Zoom window and just share an emoji about how you feel about the future of work. Let's see what people are saying or how they're feeling. Okay, good. There's some positives there. Some people who are partying about it. Okay, a couple of frowns. Good. Thank you for being honest. Okay, there's even thumbs down. Good. Good. Glad again, thank you for being honest about it. So here's the thing, right? So people have different perspectives about what work's going to look like in the future. So we'll go through each of these four, and I want to give you a practical thing in each of these four areas. By the way, please feel free to use your emoji buttons throughout this session to tell us how you're feeling, because it'll help other people in the room as well, including myself. So I speak about this a lot in my conference keynote presentations, in my workshops, and even in my leadership program. I'm about to start a new one of the leadership program, a new cohort, but I talk about various aspects of the future of work. And what I've done here is we'll look at each of these four areas, and I've picked one thing from each of those four areas that's a really practical thing that you can do. Okay, so let's start with the first one. The first one is understanding what work's coming up in the future. So, of course, as a futurist, I often get asked what's coming up in the future. And I love this quotation from Tolkien from The Hobbit. And he says, let me paraphrase here, he says, if you're doing some sort of strategic planning for the future and there's some dragons somewhere on the path, it's a pretty good idea to understand them and include them in your planning. Okay, so this first part is actually understanding what the future is going to look like, because the work that you do is going to match what's coming up in the future. There's another skill that futurists talk about called sense making, and I think this is also one of the really most useful and practical skills when you're understanding the future, especially for leaders. So let me simplify it for you. So there are three parts to this, and we'll talk about the first part. So the first part is gathering intel from the world. So looking around and seeing what's coming up, what's already out there, and gathering some intelligence so that you can then apply it to what you're doing to generate some insights that will help you understand the future. And then this is for leaders and managers, but for everybody, to then be influential, to have influence when you're sharing that, to persuade people to make change. So today's not about sense making, but we'll look at this first area here, which is around gathering the intel. Okay, so this is looking up and out rather than just down and digging deep. So let me ask you, and we'll do this as a scale of 1 to 10. So I reckon in your role, how well do you assess the future? Okay, so you know what's happening day to day, you may be on top of everything that's happening internally. How well, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you assess the future? Okay, let's see what people are saying. I'll give you a bit of a scale here. Okay, good. Okay, so above average. So you're doing a pretty good job. 6 to 7. I can see some 9s and some 7.5s in there as well as some low ones. Okay. So the reason I'm sharing this is because we'll do a couple of other questions around this coming up soon. But the real reason I'm sharing this is because I think we all need to be doing that. Right? We need to understand what's coming up in our future. It's very easy to get caught up in what's happening now and forget about spending time thinking about the future. As an example, like when people engage me to speak at their conferences, I spoke last week on the Gold Coast at a conference for the marinas and boating sector, and I did 4 things for them. So mainly they engaged me to deliver a keynote presentation, and their focus was AI. They asked me to talk about AI in that industry, and I also moderated a panel with some AI experts and some practitioners, people actually using it. But the other thing I did was I wrote a report for them, which is talking about external pressures that are going to affect that industry, and prepared a trend video. Okay, so we did this report. I'm not going to go into the details of how I did it, but there's a futurist process called PESTLE, looking at external pressures, and then they got the report, and they all got a copy of it. They could download it and read through it. So it's a pretty good report, even though I say so myself. And as you can see, just from a few pages here, it's not like very dense in content, so it's fairly readable, but still, it's a 35-page report. And who's got time to read 35-page reports, even if they're written in a readable way with lots of diagrams and graphs and things? We don't, right? So the other thing that I showed them how to do is to use a tool called Google Notebook to help them to get a better handle on the report. Let me just ask how many people are using. Are you using Google Notebook? Just type in yes or no in the chat. I'm just glad to know how many people are using it. Okay, so most people are still on the know. Great. I think this is one of the best kept AI secrets. So one simple takeaway is, if you're not already using Google Notebook, go to Google Notebook, just Google that, Google Notebook. It's free if you've got a Google account, which is pretty much all of us, and you can upload documents to it, and then you can chat with those documents. So you can ask questions of that document itself. So it's like AI, but specific to a document or documents that you upload. And you can also do other things like generate a mind map. You can generate infographics. You can generate a slide deck, which gives you an overview of the content. You can even generate AI podcast interviews about the content. So it's a great tool for consuming information. Okay, so actually let me ask, like this, I'm genuinely curious for other people in the room. So what sort of tools are you using to consume information? So we all get overloaded with information. What sort of tools are you using? So let's see what's coming up in the chat. Good. So people are using AI. So a few people are saying Copilot. Other AI tools, yeah. And they don't only have to be AI, by the way. So it's other tools to use. Lots of people are using Claude. Andrew says my brain, which is good. Google, email, yeah, podcasts. So some people like listening. So I like listening, so I subscribe to a lot of podcasts. Okay, so good to see you here. ChatGPT, Copilot, Gamma, Common Sense. So Gamma is a tool for converting documents into presentations. And YouTube, another one that's come through. Good. And I think we need to be doing this. We really do. Because we're getting a lot of information and we're getting overloaded with it, and we need to be able to manage that. So let me ask you another question. So I asked you, how well did you assess the future? This is a little bit of a sharper question. Okay, so again, I'm going to ask you to do this from 1 to 10, but before you rate yourself on how much time you spend on the future, let me give you a framing for this. So I'm asking you, how much time do you spend on the future, and give yourself a rating from 1 to 10. Think of it this way. If you work a full 5-day week, and no, not everyone does, but let's take a full 5-day week, there are 10 half days in that. So when I say how much time do you spend in the future, if you give yourself a rating of 6, that means that you spend 3 days a week thinking about, planning for, strategizing for on the future. If you give yourself, if you give yourself a 2, that means you spend 1 day a week doing that. Okay, so given that, if you rate yourself 10, that means you spend all your time thinking about the future. And there's some people who do that. Okay, so give yourself a rating. If you give yourself fractions, they won't appear on the score. Yeah, okay, so this is quite common. Okay, so the question is, I remember I asked you 2 questions. I said, how well do you assess the future? And then how much time do you spend on it? Now, those 2 things aren't necessary. They don't have to be correlated. It doesn't mean that just because you only spend a day on the future, that means you're not doing enough. But quite often it does. Like quite often you need to spend more time on it to be able to assess it better. Okay, obviously as you get better at doing it, you can spend less time on it, and you might have other people doing that for you. But think about how much time are you doing thinking about the future, and do you need to up that? And especially if you're a leader, I think that the more senior you are, the more of your salary is being paid for you to be thinking about the future. Okay, let me say that again. The more senior you are, the more you're being paid to think about the future. Okay, so are you doing that? And I reckon when it comes to thinking about the future, think of it in 3 ways. So this is still gathering intel, so we're still talking about the sense-making part of it. So the first bit is digging deep. The second bit is scanning wide, and the third bit is looking far. So digging deep is going further into your expertise, which is good. We should all be doing that, especially if we have a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, then that can count for a lot. Just keep in mind that expertise and experience are all about the past. Okay, so if you're thinking about the future, absolutely draw on your experience and expertise, but it's not enough. The scan wide is looking around to see what's already out there that might have some ideas for you, might give some clues for you. You might be able to generate some insights. The look far is the bit that's looking into the future. And people often say to me as a futurist, tell us what's happening in our industry, whether it's marinas or insurance or the education sector, tell us what's coming up. And that's good, that's the looking far bit. But I reckon you can get a lot of value by doing the middle part of that, scanning wide. Okay, so let me give you an example, and let's do a little bit of an exercise here. So this is looking at the outside and looking in. This picture here is one of Google's early self-driving cars. Okay, so this was maybe about 10 years ago now. Google created this prototype, and it's kind of a little cool, funny looking car there. And most people hadn't heard about self-driving cars. So I used to take this photo around on my phone, and I used to annoy people that I met by saying, hey, look, this could be the future of driving. What do you think? So there are different reactions to that. But the question I'm asking you here is, what impact is that going to have on various industries? So let's talk about car-related industries first. So obviously, self-driving cars are obviously having an impact on the car industry. Okay, what are some other industries that might be affected by self-driving cars? Okay, let me give you another example. Insurance, car insurance. So maybe you don't need to get insurance because you're not driving the car. So insurance came up. Delivery, yes. Ubers and taxis, absolutely, right? So in fact, Uber's investing a lot of money in self-driving because their biggest cost are paying drivers. Safety, absolutely. And actually related to that, Ian Way says hospital emergency departments, because it will absolutely, if all the cars on the road are self-driving, it will reduce the number of accidents and fatalities on the road. So you could look at hospital emergency departments, also think about funeral directors. Traffic lights, yep, we don't need traffic lights if all the cars are self-driving. Heavy haulage is already happening. Public transport. So you don't have to own a car. Maybe all the cars are public cars. They pick you up, take your kids to school, come back, and they don't come back, they go to somebody else. Okay. Freeway building. Yes, schools and parents. Police and traffic control. Okay, now this is good. This is fantastic. And in a group like this, a very creative group, and obviously we're going to get some examples here, right? Some really relevant examples. Now, let's take your industry. Okay, so what's your industry? What's your sector? What impact will self-driving cars have on your industry? Let me give you an example. So I speak at conferences. People come together for a conference. The MC introduces me. I give my presentation. I walk off to standing ovation and rapturous applause. That's my job. That's big part of my day job. What will self-driving cars mean? Well, what if people are in their car, and because they don't have to pay attention to the road, they're actually spending more time consuming information? So am I going to be part of creating online material that people are watching in their car? Because that may be the place where they do learning. Okay, doesn't mean conferences go away, but it could be a place that could be relevant for me, and it's going to change change what I do. Let me give you, okay, so now I'm asking you for your examples. Think about your industry. Think about your sector. How will self-driving cars affect it? So Jeff, in education, students will be able to get to school without parent assistance or buses. Absolutely. Let's go a bit further, Jeff. What happens if your car is a classroom? Right? What if we might still have schools, but can students learn in cars and self-driving buses as well? Okay, cars have operating models. Okay, absolutely, but give me an example from your industry. When there's so many drivers, yes, Sarah. So we don't need so many volunteers to drive our cars. Pete, assisted school transport for students with disabilities. Yeah, this one, the Meredith says more blur of work and home time. So what if your car is your office, okay, or one of your workplaces? Okay, so you don't use your car to get to the office. Your car is your office. You can have meetings in your cars. Okay, Alan, yes, absolutely. Right, in mining, there's so many places where autonomous vehicles are being used. Okay, right, drink driving. Right, there's no such thing as drink driving now because we are not driving. We're not getting behind the wheel of the car. So is that going to affect hospitality? Is it going to affect venues? Is it going to affect the wine industry, the beer industry? So Jeff, another question, comment that you made, no requirement for cars to be parked at workplaces. Yeah, so definitely one that's related to cars is that the parking, the massive multi-billion-dollar parking industry will collapse because cars never need to park. Right, I saw some stats a while ago now, but it said in most big cities, 1/3 of the traffic is drivers looking for parking spaces. Now, whether that's true or not, whether it's maybe 1/10, it's still a huge amount for parking, as well as then having to find a place to park. Again, those big car parks become irrelevant because we don't need them anymore. Okay, Neil, impacts on house and unit building density. Yep, absolutely. It'll affect property and real estate. Neil, I'd like to know for you, how's it going to affect financial services? Because that's the industry that you work in. Yeah, pooled cars, right? So homes, the similar sort of point that Robert's making here. Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time on this, right? But it's a really, the reason I've done this is because this is what we should be doing. We should be looking, when we're looking outside in, sometimes knowing what's coming in the future is already happening somewhere else. And what you're looking for is what impact is that going to have on us. And just being able to gather that intel and then say, here's an insight that's going to affect us in 5 years' time, in 3 years' time, or maybe in 6 months' time, will be really valuable when you're thinking about the future of work. Okay, so thinking about that intel, any questions about that? I did say I'm going to stop and give you the chance to ask questions, so here's the time to do that. Okay, thank you for emojis. Okay, that time's going well, so let's look at this second area. You can keep asking questions as we go as well. We don't have to, if you've got any questions about the first section, that's okay, you can ask them later. So let's look at this second area, which is about having the right people in your team. So finding, nurturing, and keeping the best people. And this is very much about what's sometimes called an EVP, or your employee value proposition. What is it that you offer that makes people want to work with you? Okay, be part of your team, not because they have to, but because they want to, because they're choosing it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, again, let me see in the room, how strong is your EVP? So for your organization, and specifically if you're a team, if you're a leader or a manager, think about the EVP for your team alone. Okay, because not every team is the same in an organization, but give me a scale of 1 to 10, how strong it is. And this is saying, are we a great place to work? No, so somebody lower who scores higher than us, people might jump ship and go and work there. Good. People generally rate themselves pretty highly. Not always. I can see some lower scores here as well. Okay, question. We'll come back to this. We'll come back to that rating. What's a workfluencer? You know, you can look it up, obviously, but if I said to you, there's such a thing, and I've given you a clue because it's Gen Z, there's a thing called a workfluencer. What do you think it is? Just have a guess in the chat, or if you know, type it in the chat. So Kaiser says internal advocate. Meredith says someone who promotes your workplace. Tony says early adopter. Okay, so you've kind of got it, right? So people who talk about your business in through their social channels. So these are a lot of people got that answer right. So these are people who are like people, we hear people talking about influencers. So these are influencers on their socials, but they're not they're selling sponsored products or promoting something, except where they are, but they're promoting their workplace. So these are influencers who talk about their workplace, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you'd hope that it's mostly good, but occasionally, because they've built enough reputation capital, you don't mind them sharing an odd thing that happened or a bad thing that happened, as long as it doesn't damage your brand. Okay, but these are the people internally who are sharing. Now, the important part of this, and the reason I'm sharing this, is because when you think about your employee value proposition, and we here in the room, we got a score of 8 out of 10 on average for the people in the room. Okay, so if you say your EVP is 8, 9, 10, maybe even 7, the real question is, how do they know? How do people outside know that you're a great place to work at? Okay, so now a workfluencer is a huge asset for you. It's somebody who's promoting you on their socials, okay, which means that they've got reach, they've got influence. You want people like them to work for you because you've got a great place to work, and they will reach out to people, other people will reach out to them. So they're building your reputation, they're building your brand for you. So this is an actual question for you. If you say you've got a high EVP, how do they know? How do outsiders know that you've got a strong employee value proposition? Okay, real question for you. Do you have a workfluencer? Is it, do people rate you on Glassdoor? Or is it basically only on what's on your website in terms of your LinkedIn or what you advertise on Seek? How do people actually know that yours is a great place to work at? Okay, so John, you talk to people outside. Good. Yeah, so Pete, it's interesting. Like, I'd like to go into more depth in this if I had more time, that you do an opinion survey. Okay, but does that help others know what people think about you? So then you publish that survey. Good. That's through your official channels. Good. No problem at all with that. So positive engagement from staff. Yes, so Daniel says from your own staff. Good. Okay, so staff themselves are talking up the workplace. Yeah, so Roz, this is good, right? The positive vibe they feel when they walk in. Yes, so they walk in and they feel that vibe, so in person. Good. Employee engagement. Industry reputation. Where's that reputation come from, Robert? That's what I'm asking, really. Is it from people who worked there and left? Is it from people who worked there, left, and they've been welcomed back, and they come back as alumni and actually work there again? So yeah, so this is interesting. The project is public knowledge. When successful, they see and hear about it. Good. Do they also hear about your workplace culture? Okay, again, social media posts. So are the social media posts coming from people who work there, Sarah? And if they are, great. Okay, so this is what you want. This is a shift. I'm not saying don't have a great website. I'm not saying don't promote on LinkedIn, Seek, wherever. All of those things are important. And also, people are not only looking at your official channels to decide whether you've got a great place to work. Okay, they're looking in other areas as well. Okay, I want to talk about one other thing, which is unrelated to the EVP, but I know there are quite a few HR people who registered for this particular presentation. So I want to talk about HR, and particularly, like a lot of people are asking me now about AI in HR. So, and you might be interested in that, and whether it's HR or not, there are a lot of people who are looking at AI in recruitment. And when I speak at HR conferences in the last year, I've shared this a few times, so you might have seen this one before if you've been in one of my audiences. But there are tools now. So this one's called Sherlock, And the idea of Sherlock is that employers are doing online interviews with candidates, with people who've applied. They've got to the interview stage. They're doing an online interview, and many of these candidates are using AI behind the scenes to help them with their interview. So Sherlock is kind of a way to combat that. And so what that does from the employer side is look at the person on the screen, look at their eye movements, look at their tone of voice, look at their language, and give some idea of whether they might be using AI without telling you. So what I say is the best way that you can use Sherlock AI is to tell all your competitors about it, so that they get all the people who don't know how to use AI, and they leave the people who are using AI to you. Okay, so I said that a little bit of tongue in cheek, but I reckon this is a terrible solution. This is not what you should be doing, especially when you want your employees to be using AI more and more. So think about this. So they come to your interview. So the interview is at that little marker at the top there. But along the way, before you've even seen them, in face to face, they might have used AI. They might have gone to LinkedIn's Career Explorer. They'd have looked at JobGether, Career Coach. They'd have gone to Lightcast, which helps them understand what jobs are available in the market that might be relevant to them. Similarly, there's JobScan, which is an AI search tool to help them find jobs that they might want. Work 180 helps them match jobs out there with their values, so that'll help them filter. Then they'd go to Adzuna, which again helps them with their job search. They go to Resi, which helps them write their resume or CV and tailor it. CoverDoc helps them write a cover letter, and they might even go to Udly and get some help with interview coaching before they turn up at the online interview. And then you see them. Now, don't you want people who are competent with AI, who are curious, who are positive, who are looking at using AI to solve their problems? And this is a real problem they've got in their life. They want a job, and they're using AI to do that. When they work with you, then you want them to be using AI. And yet I see so many employers, recruiters, HR people saying they're cheating. Okay, so this is a little bit of a controversial take. I want to know what your opinion is about that. AI in HR or in recruitment, or people who are using AI in just this. As I said, there's a war for talent, and we need people who are competent and AI positive, or at least AI curious. Any questions or comments about that? Yep, John says I agree. Good. Yeah, right. And we're talking about AI very soon, and you'll see why I'm bringing this up here. Okay. Yeah, Andrew. So Andrew says I only know 2 of those tools. Okay, good, right. So you might employ somebody who knows more of them and can help you with them. Alicia, thanks, Alicia. It's real flipping thinking. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's interesting. Tony says, don't have a problem with using AI to prep, but not in the interview. And we might talk about that later, Tony. Yeah, I think we should be using AI to solve problems. Okay. Yeah, and this is one of those actually, where that's leading into something I'm about to say very soon. So we'll come on to that. Okay, let's continue because this area here, it leads very much into this area, which is combining humans and machines, and increasingly this is about humans and AI, especially for knowledge workers. So you might have seen this recently. It's graduation season for universities and schools in the USA, and I don't know whether you've seen, there's some videos of uni students who are booing their graduation speakers, who are talking about, this speaker was talking about AI as the next industrial revolution. This next one here is Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, talking about how AI is going to be so important in the future. And the students are booing them out loud. And you'll see these videos. Just search for students booing graduation speakers. And I think they're right to do that. Not because AI is bad, but because universities and schools, but I'm more sympathetic to schools because they have to work to curriculum. Universities do a terrible job of preparing their students for an AI future. So they'd say it's cheating, it's against academic integrity, you can't use it because their systems aren't set up to be able to help students use AI. In fact, they're designed that they prevent students from using AI. So it's not surprising that the students are upset about their unis doing that, because they're already using AI in their personal life, and now they see the place where, not their work, but their study is so far behind. And I wonder whether this is true for your organization as well. So I want to share a little bit of research here, but first I want to share what Professor Fei-Fei Li, who's a leading AI expert and has been for decades, says about AI. And I think we should all think about this when we're thinking about AI in our roles. Especially in our professional roles, but for our personal and social roles as well. AI is there for humans. It's there to help us. It's to help us elevate our humanity. It's not there to take our jobs. It's not there to replace our creativity. It's there to help us. So everything that we do should be focused on that, even in a workplace. Sometimes I'd say, especially in a workplace. So there's some research done by MIT last year about AI projects, and he said most AI projects failed. So I'm going to ask you, there's a percentage, I will tell you it's not a low percentage. If I ask you to guess to the nearest 10, just type in the chat what percentage of AI projects failed. So just type in a number. Okay, so the most common answer seems to be 80%. It's actually higher than that, and some people did get this. It was 95%. 95% of AI projects failed. And the reason is because they didn't bring their people along on the AI journey. There's some research done by Microsoft this year that helps to explain that, and I'll get to that. But for example, like I saw, so one of the people who asked me a question before this session said this, like, I don't know how to go from AI just doing little things, like maybe replying to emails, to what's the next step. Okay, so a lot of this is not really knowing what to do next. So the MIT research was from last year. There's some research from Microsoft. Every year they do this work trend index, and this year's one had some really interesting results. Again, it's available publicly, so if you want to know more, you can go there, get it free and download it, upload it to Google Notebook, and you can chat with it. But let me share with you a couple of things that came from there. So again, I'm going to ask you to type in the chat. So this is employees. So what Microsoft did, and these are knowledge workers who are using AI, and these are people who are using Copilot. So it's pretty widespread now, and Microsoft has access to that. So they've de-identified without breaching privacy, but they've got these stats. So what percentage of employees to the nearest 10, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, fear that they're falling behind with the adoption of AI in the workplace? Just type in the chat. Okay, in this case, I think the group's a little bit more pessimistic. So it's actually a little bit lower, but not, oops, let me go back one. Not that much lower. So 65% said that they fear that they're falling behind. Okay, so still like 2 out of 3 people are saying, I'm a bit worried that, we're falling behind, me personally. So the next question, again, this with the Microsoft survey, actually went and asked people, if you used AI for changing or improving a workflow, or maybe reinventing it altogether, were you rewarded for it? So again, to the closest 10%, what percent do you think were rewarded for improving their workflows, improving their work as a result of using AI? Okay. I think you know where this is heading. Pretty much right. Yep, it says 13%. Okay, so very few people were rewarded for it. So even the ones who were using it just weren't rewarded for doing it. Okay, and so what Microsoft said, so they call this the transformation paradox. It's not really a paradox. I'd call it transformation misalignment, but paradox sounds better in a consulting document, of course. So they call this the transformation paradox. And the paradox or the misalignment is this. So you've got an organization on the left there with the X in there, which is not really ready for adopting AI, and you've got people on the right who are, and it could be some mix of them. So are the people ready, the organization's not? Is the organization ready, the people are not? So what they said was people fall into these 4 categories. I'm going to describe the categories, and then I'll ask you, we'll do a little poll to see where you think your organization or your team is. Okay, so there are 4 categories to this. So the first one's stalled. So don't type in the chat yet. We'll go through all 4, and then I'll ask you to type in to rate yourself on one of these 4. Stalled is both. So both are weak. So the organization's not really getting anywhere with AI, and people in the organization aren't either. And the next one's blocked. So this is where people are keen to do it. They want to push ahead, but the organization's saying, no, we need to wait for let's get our policies in place, let's get all rules in place, let's get wait until you've got a Copilot enterprise license. Until then you can't do anything, and so on. And the next one is emergent, which is we're kind of on the right track. So people are using it, the organization's using it. They're not necessarily right at the leading edge, but they're kind of on the way. And the last one is what they call frontier. So frontier is the best one, where the organization's ahead, they're doing really well, and the people are also excited about it and adopting it. So if I was to ask you, and we'll do this as a poll here, and we've got this as A, B, C, and D, what is your stage of AI readiness in your organization and team? So do you reckon that the people who are frontier and your organization is, or is the other end where they're stalled? So let's see what people are typing. Okay, so it says most people are in that emergent stage. Emergent's not bad, okay. Emergent is like we're trying to find our way through this. Okay, so 80%, 80 plus percentage in the emergent range. Okay, so this is good. This is good. So let me just share with you what Microsoft found in its survey. So what they found was that emergent, like about half the organizations say, people are we're kind of doing okay, we're doing okay, we're helping them along, we're growing with that. This is really good. This is really good. Okay, any questions about this? 20% are at the actually moving ahead, but 15% aren't started at all. And then there's this 10% where the people want to do stuff, but they can't because they're blocked by the organization's policies or for whatever other reason. Any questions or comments on that? I'm waiting for someone to say that doesn't add up to 100, Gihan. Okay, it doesn't. There is another 5%, and the other 5% is what they call unclaimed capacity, where the organization is ready, but the people are not. Okay, so that was the lowest group. So that I didn't include that one because it was the lowest. And so people are ready to go. They're ready to use AI. They want to use it. It's just that the organization may not be letting them do it. Okay, I will run another session about AI because everyone's asking about it. But that's all I want to talk about here. So are your people aligned with you, your team, and the organization more broadly when it comes to AI adoption? I was speaking to somebody, actually speaking to quite a few people, this is true of them. This was a global organization. They've got this AI policy and they're rolling out lots of AI use, but it just doesn't fit for everybody. Meredith says, yeah, there's concerns about using AI. Right? Okay, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use it at all. It means you should be careful about using it and educate your people about the areas that they can use it in, because AI is such a powerful tool that you don't have to turn it. It doesn't have to be an on and off situation. It's not black and white. There are ways that you can use AI without worrying about whether it has concerns. Okay, some things do, but part of this is around education. Yeah, so Neil says good. Yeah, so rules are clear. We spent time each month seeing how we can use it better. Good. And this is part of that journey, right? So AI is moving so fast. What you knew and what you did last year may not even be relevant now. Okay, when I'm feeling provocative, I will say to a team or a leader, there's no good reason why your people shouldn't be using AI. And they say things, oh, no, we need to care about privacy and the Privacy Act. And so that's not a good reason. that's the reason for you educating them, educating people about how to use it. Okay, so I still think this is true. There's no good reason why you and your people should not be using AI. Okay, just use it appropriately. Yeah, so it isn't particularly easy to stop mavericks from doing their own thing, right? It's an organizational risk. And you're right, Jeff, it is totally. It's true of any other technology. It's, again, it is a risk. But also, like, you can't stop mavericks from going out and talking about the school. In this case, Jeff's at a school, talking about the school in a private conversation. Okay. Let's do the last section here, because the last section is around that fourth area of the future of work, is building a culture. And as I said at the start, everything that we're doing has to be about that culture that embraces change. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this section, but I will share with you one specific thing that you can do in this area. So I'd like to know, again, let's use emoji buttons here. How does your team feel about change? So use your emojis. So it could be, if you're a business owner or you're a very senior leader, it could be the whole organization. But even if you're a senior leader, can I suggest, I'm talking about your direct reports. How do they feel about change? Okay, positive, good. Good. Great to see so many people are positive about it. Let me ask you another question. Without looking it up, has anyone heard of the IKEA effect? It's this term was coined by behavioral economist Dan Ariely, and he's talking about people and people adopting ideas. Okay, so what do you think the IKEA effect is? And I'm more than happy to take your guesses here, even if you don't know, and even if you get it wrong, it doesn't matter. Okay, let me tell you what Dan Ariely says. So he's a behavioral economist, and he says that we're rational and predictably rational. So given Tony, you've got the right answer, and a couple of people have as well. So people value what they build themselves. So Dan Ariely says that when people are involved in the solution to a problem or the service that you're providing them, they value it more. Okay, and he's done some research into this, which I won't go into. But the idea is, like, the reason we love our wobbly IKEA bookcase is because we put it together. Okay, so we feel we're part of it. And this is so true in the things that you're doing in your workplace as well. So this is why these strategic, top-level, hierarchical command and control ideas about digital transformation, AI transformation, mergers and acquisitions, all of those sort of things that say, this is the way we're going to do it, they just don't work very well. They very, very rarely work. What you want is, you want to have the IKEA effect. You want people involved in that journey. And that means that as much as possible, let's take AI as an example here, but this is culture in general. You have top-down, where you have policies and guardrails and guidelines and education, but you also have bottom-up, people coming up with their own ideas and sharing them. Okay, so there's a great book about change called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, and they talk about these 9 principles for making change happen. And the first one is they talk about finding the bright spots, finding examples of where people are actually doing the change that you want. So I've really got a question for you is, how do you share your success stories? So if people do a little thing with AI and it helps them in their role, that's really good. But have you got a process for them to share that with everybody else in the team? There's a comment earlier from Neil. I think you were saying this, Neil, that you do that. You share those success stories. So one of my favorite examples is I worked with Mercy Care, which is an organization here in Western Australia, and did an innovation program. We worked around AI, and they do different services: childcare, aged care, disability services. And the childcare team came up with an AI solution that every time a new child is enrolled in childcare, they have to write a development plan. Normally takes about 3 hours. They came up with an AI solution, AI plus human solution, that reduced that to 15 minutes. Great idea. Great idea. And it really made a big difference, because then the staff could work with the children rather than spend all their time on the admin of developing the plan. the thing I love more about this idea was not just their idea, which is good, but when they shared it in our innovation program, somebody from the aged care team said, oh, look, this is really good. Can we talk to you afterwards? Because when we get a new resident into our aged care home, we want to create a support plan for them. And we possibly can use your idea. And someone from HR said, can we talk to you as well? Because when we employ somebody, we want to create a career plan for them, and we might be able to use your idea. Okay, so are you sharing, and how are you sharing? If a couple of people have preempted my question, which I've got for you, is how do you share success stories in your team? Okay, so Alex says shared staff and team meetings. Yeah, good, right? So what process have you got to share success stories? Not just AI stories, but success stories. Good, team meetings, right? And again, this is part of the IKEA effect. The people who created it, they love it. And when you share it, it's the bright spots, which is what Chip and Dan Heath were talking about. Kaiser, yeah, intranet. So what is it? Do you have an online bulletin board? Yeah, those sort of things. Meetings, newsletters. Barbara, yep. Neil, yes. Neil's following up on my comment, I think. Yeah, so lots of people are using things like Teams now. Teams chats to share. Okay, and make it a standard thing that you do. It's good to see that not all of these are online. Online ones are good, no problem at all with that, but do them in your team meetings, like share success stories. Julie says staff compliment seat and slips. Great. Ian Way, Microsoft Teams channel and daily team meetings. Good. Now this is interesting. So Susie says there's a culture that maybe says that you don't share them because they might be disallowed. Interesting, right? Interesting. And ensure there's sufficient in-person moments. Okay, so to finish up, we talked about the future of work. We talked about these 4 ideas. I promised to give you an idea in each of those 4 areas. And now you may not think, oh, I can use all 4 of those, but I'm asking you, before we finish up, what's an idea that you've got that you can share? That you think that you can take away and use from this session. Please share it because it'll help other people in the room as well. Okay, so let me wait until people do that. Okay, more discussion around AI. Thank you, John. Yeah, try Google Notebook. Yeah, I think Google Notebook, as I said, one of the best kept secrets. And some good ideas for books. Good, okay. Yeah, outside in thinking, really, really important, really valuable, and not that hard to do. Around AI. Tony says share successes. We'll talk about that soon, Tony. Book recommendations, good. Yeah, Vicky, share what you've learned with your team. So everyone's going to get a copy of the recording. Feel free to share the recording as well. And Yinwei says, I've seen some examples, poor examples, and I need to think carefully about sharing it. Good. Okay, so thanks everybody. If you want to engage with me, do lots of conference keynotes at the moment. It's conference season. Also run either in-house workshops or conference breakout sessions, or run a panel like I did for the Marinas conference. And also, if you want to engage with me about my leadership programs, either to come in and work with your leaders or to work with the individual leaders, or sometimes I run public programs, please get in touch. All the details are here at gihanperera.com. I want to share a story to finish up from 20 years ago. Because 20 years ago, I went to the Gold Coast to live, and it was kind of didn't know if it was going to be temporary or permanent. I had lots of clients on the other side of the country, what we Perth people call the remote side of the country. And I figured, well, I could go to Sydney because that's where most of my clients were, but I'm too much of a Perth boy. So Coolangatta would be really good. That's where the Gold Coast Airport is. And I remember when I first went there, I thought, I'm trying new things. So I wanted to learn how to surf, as something I'd never done before. So I did a couple of surfing lessons, only a couple because I also injured my shoulder playing squash, so I couldn't swim for a few months. So I thought, well, probably going in the water for surfing is not so good. But I learned something really valuable on the very first surfing lesson that I went to. So there's a small group of us. We were standing on the beach, and the instructor was kind of telling us about, just getting us started. And he said, any questions? And I put up my hand and I said, when you're standing there, just looking out over the water, how do you know when there might be a good wave coming? And he said very kindly, he said to me, and there's a really common question, and it's the wrong question. Because if you're standing on the beach waiting for the wave, you're kind of too late. Because by the time it comes, you're already too late. What you need to do is get out there and be paddling. So you need to begin paddling, and then you can look around, and then you can catch the wave. And I reckon we need to do more of that. We need to just get out there and begin paddling. And more, we need to do that rather than just standing, looking out, hoping that we're going to be in time to catch it. So my last message for you here is this one here. I've said it before. Don't wait for things to be perfect. Don't wait for the perfect wave. Don't wait until you're not busy. Don't wait till the end of the financial year. Start before you're ready, because the world isn't going to wait for us. Thanks everyone for coming along. Thanks everyone for taking part. I will send out the recording later, and all the best. The next presentation will be about AI. I'll see you in the future. Bye for now.